So thank you for choosing to be with us today in our virtualness. And that truth that we continue to be community, whether we're physically in person or we're living in Zoom land, it's something we learned from our experience of the last couple of years, and it's useful because we learned, most of the time anyway, that we can be connected even if we're not physically in the same place. And that's huge because that's a different story than we had in the past. And today we're also recognizing the shortest day of the year, which happens this year on Wednesday. And then the return of the light, which begins very, very slowly at first on Thursday. And of course, those of us attuned to the modern world, we don't really notice, right? Because we're not in it constantly. And we're not afraid that the light won't come back the way the prehistoric people were. And we don't feel a need necessarily to light bonfires or do rituals to make sure the light comes back. Do we? Maybe. We do have two formal opportunities to honor this changing of season this week. Tuesday at 6 on this Zoom channel with David Prouty and myself. And then for the locals who wish to come out, Wednesday at 5 o'clock at the Unity of Tucson Labyrinth, we will do a very quiet very quiet in-person labyrinth walk and solstice celebration. In both cases, we'll remember the light and the light that lives in each of us already. And any other details about these two activities are in your new electronic weekly newsletter. We also recognize Hanukkah today, since tonight is the first night of this particular celebration of light that has its origins somewhere between 170 and 140 BCE, well over 2,000 years ago. The story is very cool, and whether it's apocryphal, mythological, or actual, factual, I don't know and I don't care. But the story goes that Jewish soldiers took back their primary temple from the invaders and lit a menorah on the altar in remembrance and in celebration. And the menorah had a whole bunch of candles on it. The miracle was they only had enough oil for one night, but the menorah burned for 8. And so that's the thing with light. We have more in us than we know, and it's available if we choose to use it. So, back in prehistory, the oldest known celebrations, or maybe they're not known, maybe they're imagined, maybe they're reconstructed, stories of solstice celebrations are roughly 12,000 years old, during the Neolithic period of our human habitation on the planet. And back then, people were afraid that the light wouldn't come back. And they knew that if they were in darkness, they were screwed, because light is necessary for warmth. It's necessary for plants to grow. And it's necessary for us too, even though we don't think about it exactly in that way. And so I've been sort of scanning again this last couple of days to try to find a spiritual tradition that doesn't celebrate light. And I came up completely empty-handed. The one that's the most iffy in my mind, or at least was until this week, was Buddhists write about it this way. Why light? Light means understanding, because light represents wisdom. And light removes and dispels misunderstanding. All of our sufferings come from not knowing and not seeing. Offering light indirectly removes confusion. Throughout the Buddhist world and all traditions of Buddhist practice, devotees offer light. The life stories of accomplished men and women give examples of people beginning their path to liberation by offering light to an image or to a place, a pilgrimage. We light the way for ourselves and for all other beings when we wish to dispel the darkness of ignorance. And if we think about it, we do the same thing. We just don't necessarily do it with candles. And as you know, in the most basic way, life on Earth depends on light. And humans have been unconsciously conscious of this at some level ever since we developed the capacity to notice our surroundings. A couple of years ago, I ran across an old story written in 1941 by science fiction writer Isaac Asimov. It's right in between short story and novella. I'm not sure what to call it. But he wrote a story called Nightfall. And it's about an imaginary world that had 6 different suns. And on that particular planet, it was a very rare occasion for all of the suns to either go down or to be hidden by an eclipse. It only happened once every 2,050 years. And what was historically true on that planet was every time the sun went down, people went a little crazy. They didn't know that this was natural. They didn't know that this happened repetitively, because what happened when the suns all went away and it got dark and they could see stars, they thought the world was ending. They thought the stars were going to eat their souls. They thought, life as they knew it was over. And so they had to have light. So they burned everything to the ground. It's crazy to us, right? And yet, if you don't have an awareness of how things work, you can see how that could happen. And so this group of scientists in this story decided they would see if they could prove what was going on with this eclipse happening and with the stars coming out. And, and then they could prove to the people that this was normal. This was a natural thing, if uncommon. And so they didn't have to destroy their civilization every time it happened. Well, darkness fell. They could see the stars. It was scary. It was weird. The townspeople went out of their mind with fear and they blew everything and they burned everything up because they needed light and they didn't know better. It's hard to say that that's weird because we see so many people react in fear. And we do too sometimes, right? So how do we remember that the light is always with us? How do we remember that this power source is in us always? And how do we demonstrate that? That's up to us. Now, the science geek in me had a field day this week because the folks at Lawrence Livermore Laboratories created fusion ignition. Not this week, this last month. Creating more energy from fusing 2 isotopes of hydrogen together than they spent to get the process going. What did that energy look like? Light. And the part of me that watched all of the iterations of Star Trek when I was a younger human, part of me believes that fusion reactors already exist. But in fact, they only exist in imagination so far. And this fusion reaction that the folks at Lawrence Livermore managed to pull off is the beginning of the creation of a dream of clean energy. So the story that comes out of imagination, Gene Roddenberry and all the people that followed him, about being able to create energy, being able to create light, being able to have clean energy. Wow. That's just exciting to me. And so here we are looking at the shortest day of the year. We get to remember light. We get to remember the renewal of light, and we get to remember the light that lives in each one of us. And there's nothing that we have to do for that light to be there. It's already there. If we want to use it, though, we have to recognize it, and we have to claim it. And to be honest, we don't. There's nothing that says we have to use it. We can deny our own light if we want. I'm not sure why we would, but we can. And so really it's a question of, what do we choose to do? And if we choose to own our light, then we need to accept it and allow it and let it show up. So the question is a personal one. Is there some way that you want to shine your light that you're not doing it? Is there some way you want to show up more in your life as God, as you? It's a personal question. It deserves reflection. It deserves thought. It deserves consideration, because the answer may change on a day-to-day basis. So I want to read a little piece from Dr. Holmes from The Science of Mind, page 415. There must come a time in our experience when we speak the conviction that is within us. The conviction of the spiritual universe in which we live is real and powerful. The light cannot be borrowed from another. Each has been furnished with a divine torch, whose wick burns from the oil of the eternal and ever-renewing substance of faith in oneself and others. And then I want to reread a piece from today's spiritual thought, but I want to back up a little bit before diving into the part that I read earlier. Dr. Holmes, 365 Science of Mind, page 193, paragraphs 1 and 2. Humankind is one with spirit and cannot be separated from it. Our word has power because our word is the action of God through our thought. Now I clarify my vision and purify my thought so that it becomes a mirror reflecting inspiration direct from the secret place of the Most High at the center of my own being. I do this by quiet contemplation, not through strenuous effort, but by learning to fast from all negation and to feast on the affirmations of spiritual realization. I know I need never break before the onslaught of any confusion that exists around me. Today, I walk in the light of God's love. Today, I am guided and my guidance is multiplied. I know exactly what to do and exactly how to do it. There is an inspiration within me that governs every act, every thought, in certainty with conviction and peace. I know that the key that unlocks the treasure house, the key to the kingdom of God, is in my spiritual hand. And that's just as true for everyone else as it is for me. I'm not unique and special. As David sang right before the talk, we are already the light of the world, our world. And if we're not experiencing it or expressing it, we get to ask ourselves, why not? And decide whether or not that's how we want to be in the world. Each one of us is already that city set on a hill, the candle on the candlestick with a wick and the light. We get to decide whether and how we wish to be visible, and to what end, for what purpose. Marianne Williamson offered us a challenge in her book, A Return to Love. This quote used to scare me. It doesn't scare me anymore. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So I want to close with two pieces of poetry. One from the ancient Persian mystic poet Rumi, and one from a modern day mystic poet. But first, Rumi. You sit here for days saying, this is strange business. You are the strange business. You have the energy of the sun in you, but you keep it knotted up at the base of your spine. You're some kind of gold that wants to stay melted in the furnace so you won't have to become coins. Say one in your lonesome house. Loving all the rest separately is hiding a lie. You've gotten drunk on so many kinds of wine. Taste this. It won't make you wild. It's fire. If you don't understand by this time, your living is firewood. This wave of talking builds. Better we shouldn't speak, but let it grow within. And then from modern mystic poet Keelan Harkin, stop thinking about God. Cry your heart out. Stop your dry, prim talks with God. She doesn't desire those boring meetings. Wake up at midnight. Write her love poems in star ink. God's tired of the same position with prayer. Lie down on the forest floor and drink her through your pores. Stop waiting for her to give your deeds golden stars and realize you are made of them. Each one of us gets to let our light shine. We get to decide what that means. We get to decide how we show up. We get to decide how we present. And maybe it's being kind to somebody who's not kind to us. Maybe it's actually bringing those poems out into the world. Maybe it's art. Maybe it's prayer. We get to decide who we are and how we wish to be. Do that. Bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So now I want to go ahead and roll into the prayer. So I take a breath and I settle on my chair. And I remember this light that lives in me, lives in all. I remember this light, this beneficent, beneficial, generous, gorgeous light lives in me and in all. I remember this goodness that flows from the divine through all beings. I remember this light shows up as joy, harmony, peace, power, ease, delight. And I remember on these dark days of winter that we are the light of the world. And we get to express this light in whatever way is most meaningful for us. And when we do this, we give other people the encouragement to do the same. I celebrate being a light in the world, knowing this light is reflective of the divine in me, knowing that same light lives at the core of all others, because each already is a divine expression, an emanation of that one light, that one life, that one heart. And I celebrate this light, knowing that it resonates, it empowers, it increases the amount of goodness in the world. I bless each and all as they move through their day and through their week, celebrating the goodness of life, celebrating the joy, peace, power, and poise that shows up as each one. Knowing it's not a task or a chore, it's simply allowing our presence to reveal. I relax, allow, and let it be. And so it is.